Of course, here's a longer and more detailed version of the hook. The silent coronation. Is Leclerc Ferrari's golden boy? Since the announcement of his monumental move to Ferrari, the Formula One world has speculated about Lewis Hamilton's role within the team. It was said that the multi-time champion wasn't coming to Maranello to be the second driver, but rather to reaffirm his legacy and pursue one last title. However, what is brewing behind closed doors within the Scuderia seems to contradict this narrative. Sources close to the team, and Hamilton's own perception, suggest that Charles Leclerc has already been quietly anointed as Ferrari's golden boy. There is talk of a series of decisions, subtle at first, but increasingly evident, that point to the Monégasque as the future, and perhaps the present, on which the Maranello leadership has placed all its hopes. And most intriguing of all, Hamilton, far from resigning himself, has proof. Indications of race strategies, component development, and even the allocation of key personnel that, in his opinion, put him at a disadvantage. Could it be that the long-awaited partnership between two titans of the track is destined to end in friction before it even begins? Or is Ferrari history repeating itself, with a clear favorite emerging over a champion thirsty for glory? Time will tell if Hamilton's arrival heralds a new chapter of triumphs, or if his role has already been, in the shadows, predefined. When Lewis Hamilton joined Ferrari, many believed he would be the unquestionable number one driver. But recent whispers inside the Maranello factory are painting a very different picture, one that Hamilton himself seems to have just uncovered. According to sources close to the team, there has been a growing internal structure that, far from revolving entirely around the British icon, quietly preserves the long-standing priority status of Charles Leclerc. And now, Hamilton is no longer staying silent. During a recent interview with an Italian media outlet, Hamilton carefully avoided direct accusations, but his tone suggested deep frustration. "I came here to build something together, but unity means transparency," he said, prompting speculation about what he has seen behind closed doors. This shift comes at a crucial time. Internally, Ferrari has been attempting to balance their historic loyalty to Leclerc, who has been with the team since 2019, with their high-profile acquisition of Hamilton. However, analysts like Peter Windsor and Mark Presley have long questioned whether the team could truly operate with two equal leaders. Hamilton's arrival was marketed as a fresh start, but evidence is mounting that the Monaco-born driver continues to receive strategic preference in areas like simulator hours, chassis updates, and even media positioning. Could Hamilton have just stumbled upon a carefully crafted plan to keep him as the secondary force in the background of Leclerc's narrative? What has truly raised eyebrows is the subtle, almost invisible way in which this alleged plan numero dos seems to be unfolding. For months, Hamilton has played the part of the respectful newcomer, praising Maranello's legacy, smiling in front of cameras, and publicly stating that he joined Ferrari for a challenge bigger than himself. However, behind that polished exterior, insiders now claim that he has begun privately questioning certain operational decisions that consistently appear to favor Charles Leclerc. The spark, it seems, was ignited by an engineering debriefing that Hamilton allegedly walked out of earlier this season, when his input was seemingly sidelined during a strategy review. While the incident was downplayed publicly, Italian journalist Leo Tuini hinted that Hamilton's trust in the team's internal hierarchy may have been fundamentally shaken from that moment onward. Furthermore, recent comments by former world champion Nico Rosberg, who knows Hamilton intimately from their tense years at Mercedes, have only added fuel to the fire. Rosberg stated during a podcast appearance that Luis is not the type to accept being number two quietly. He might play along for a while, but when the tipping point comes, he will push back, and hard. These remarks have gained traction, especially in light of new footage from a closed-door team meeting leaked on social media. In it, although voices are blurred, fans believe they can identify Hamilton challenging a senior engineer over what he described as a pre-baked direction that was clearly not made with both cars in mind. And while Ferrari maintains that both drivers receive equal treatment, the perception among fans and insiders is quickly shifting. Questions are beginning to emerge. Is this the same political climate that Fernando Alonso once escaped from when he departed the Scuderia in 2014? Is Ferrari once again caught in the paradox of national pride versus professional parity? Most crucially, how long will Hamilton tolerate what increasingly feels like a carefully orchestrated hierarchy with him at the bottom? The situation becomes even more complex when one examines the broader context of how Ferrari has historically managed its driver dynamics. Throughout its storied history, from the era of Michael Schumacher to the controversial partnership between Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen, Ferrari has often favored a clearly defined first driver approach. This culture, rooted in a traditionalist Italian mindset, places great emphasis on loyalty, long-term commitment, and symbolic alignment with the team's legacy. Charles Leclerc, being a product of the Ferrari Driver Academy and widely seen as the emotional anchor of Maranello's future, fits that mold perfectly. His close ties with figures like Presidente Jon Elkann and Director Tecnico Enrico Cardile have only reinforced his standing as the favored son within the organization. By contrast, Hamilton, despite his 7 world titles and legendary status, is still viewed by some internal factions as an outsider, a powerful figure whose presence could disrupt internal equilibrium. Sources close to Ferrari's operations have disclosed that certain key members of the technical team feel uneasy about Hamilton's assertive attitude during simulator sessions. According to an unnamed engineer quoted in La Gazzetta dello Sport, Luis does not follow blindly. He questions things, challenges assumptions, and that has created tension. Some here are used to Charles nodding and adapting, while Luis demands accountability from the top down. This cultural clash may be at the heart of what is now being described by pundits as an internal Cold War. Although both drivers continue to praise each other publicly, eagle-eyed observers have noted subtle body language shifts, strained handshakes, and rehearsed smiles during media appearances that suggest friction is growing behind the scenes. Even more telling is the way Ferrari's communications team has been framing narratives lately. Press releases have begun highlighting Charles' development feedback and strategic input more prominently than Hamilton's. While this could be coincidental, longtime F1 media analyst Davide Valsecchi argues that Ferrari is laying the groundwork for a clear internal storyline. If Hamilton becomes too vocal, they can easily fall back on a loyalist narrative around Leclerc's sacrifices for the team. This strategy has historical precedent. Similar approaches were seen during the Schumacher-Barrichello era, when Rubens was often portrayed as the supportive lieutenant despite evident competitiveness. It is within this high-stakes environment that Hamilton now finds himself entangled, facing a political minefield as much as a technical one. And with the whispers of a plan numero dos growing louder, the question becomes not only whether Lewis Hamilton will resist it, but whether he will expose it in a way that forces Ferrari to reckon with its internal contradictions. In recent weeks, whispers from within Maranello have turned into something more serious: structured speculation. Several well-placed figures within the paddock, including former team insiders and current technical consultants, have begun hinting at a document circulated internally by Ferrari that outlines a strategy informally labeled Plan Numero Dos. According to sources close to Corriere dello Sport, the plan allegedly prioritizes Charles Leclerc in all mid-season updates, wind tunnel resource allocation, and simulation hours. More strikingly, it reportedly proposes using Hamilton primarily as a data generator for the remainder of the development cycle. This would effectively relegate the 7-time world champion to a support role under the guise of collaborative development, a role that contradicts the original spirit of the dual-leader approach Ferrari publicly claimed to embrace. The concept of a plan numero dos is not unique in Formula Uno, especially in a team with Ferrari's political legacy. But what makes this case particularly controversial is the public image Ferrari has carefully constructed around equality and reinvention since Hamilton's signing. At the time of his announcement, director Frederic Vasseur insisted that the team would operate con igualdad de conditions. Yet internally, the implementation of that promise seems far more conditional. Recent telemetry leaks, interpreted by independent performance analysts, show that Hamilton has been consistently testing experimental setups while Leclerc's car receives the more stable, updated packages. These findings, while not officially confirmed, have sparked debate across specialized media platforms, including the race and automotor UND Sport, where experts like Ed Estro and André Seidel suggest the data shows a pattern that cannot be ignored. Adding another layer of intrigue is the subtle but deliberate silence from Hamilton himself. Known for using coded radio messages and precise post-session debriefs to express dissatisfaction, Hamilton has recently employed phrases like, "We know what this really is," and "just keep recording everything" over team communications. Analysts and former drivers, including Nico Rosberg, have interpreted these comments as signs that Hamilton is already preparing to build a case against internal favoritism. Rosberg, speaking during a recent broadcast on Sky Sports F1, said, "Luis has been in the sport long enough to recognize when something is being done behind closed doors. He will not go quietly, especially if he senses a repeat of 2016 dynamics in a different uniform." The tension is not limited to internal dynamics. Ferrari's top management is reportedly split on how to proceed. While Vasseur remains committed to calming the waters and keeping both camps aligned, others, including high-ranking executives from the EXOR board, the holding company that controls Ferrari, have expressed concern about the long-term viability of accommodating two alpha drivers. One executive, who preferred to remain anonymous, stated in a background interview with Reuters Italia that the romanticism of having both Leclerc and Hamilton in red is fading. This must become a story of results, not politics. If these divisions continue to deepen, the consequences may extend far beyond Ferrari's garage. Questions are now surfacing about how Hamilton might respond if he feels cornered. Will he go public? Will he demand contractual guarantees? Or, in a scenario that would send shockwaves through the paddock, could he even trigger a legal clause that allows him to seek a new seat for? If there is one thing Lewis Hamilton has proven time and time again, it is that he does not remain silent in the face of perceived injustice. especially when it touches on matters of transparency, equality, or respect for his legacy. In the wake of rumors surrounding Ferrari's so-called Plan Numero Dos, new developments suggest Hamilton may have already taken decisive steps behind closed doors. According to Italian outlet La Gazzetta dello Sport, sources close to the Briton claim he has formally requested a one-on-one meeting with President Jon Elkann and team principal Frederick Vasseur to address what he calls a breach in operational parity. This language, reportedly used in internal emails, points directly to the heart of the controversy, that Hamilton believes he is not being given equal opportunity within the Scuderia. What has truly sent shockwaves through the inner circle of Maranello, however, is the content of an alleged document Hamilton is preparing. Described as a performance accountability file, the dossier reportedly includes comparative data between the car specifications given to him and those assigned to Charles Leclerc since the beginning of the season. Furthermore, it allegedly details instances where Hamilton's feedback was not implemented in updates, while Leclerc's suggestions resulted in immediate aerodynamic or mechanical revisions. If this file were to be leaked, or worse, revealed publicly by Hamilton himself, it could damage Ferrari's public image and its credibility with both fans and stakeholders. Adding to the growing unrest, several members of the Ferrari engineering department are believed to be uncomfortable with how the situation is evolving. While Ferrari maintains a culture of secrecy, there have been subtle indications from certain mechanics and data engineers, picked up by journalists like Julian Bianchi from Motorsport Italia, that internal morale is faltering. The team is divided, Bianchi reported, and when two drivers of this magnitude start to compete politically, the garage splits emotionally. It is a scenario that echoes the toxic environment that once plagued Mercedes during the peak of the Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry, something few in Ferrari are eager to relive. Complicating matters further is the recent intervention of Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal and longtime Hamilton ally. While no official statement has been made, Wolff was seen speaking privately with Hamilton's manager Mark Hames during a media-free window in Monaco. This interaction, though brief, has sparked rumors that Hamilton might be reconsidering his long-term future with Ferrari, especially if the current internal dynamics continue to undermine his role. Several F1 analysts, including Karun Chandok and Natalie Pinkham, have speculated that Wolff may be encouraging Hamilton to keep his options open, particularly with the evolving driver landscape for 2026. From a commercial standpoint, the fallout could be significant. Ferrari's decision to sign Hamilton was not merely about on-track performance. It was a brand move, a symbolic union of two of the most iconic names in motorsport. The team's partnership with Hamilton boosted engagement, increased social media metrics, and attracted new sponsors eager to align with his global image and values. But if Hamilton were to publicly criticize the team's internal structure or hint at a lack of trust, it could quickly erode that carefully cultivated narrative. Already, social media has seen a wave of divided opinions, with hashtags like #BackHamilton and #LeclercFirstStrategy trending for hours after the story broke. To make matters even more precarious, a growing segment of Ferrari's own fanbase, particularly those in Latin America and Southeast Asia, are voicing concern about what they perceive as subtle favoritism. In online forums and fan channels, comparisons are being drawn between this situation and past controversies involving drivers like Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen, where hidden hierarchies played a key role in performance discrepancies. This time, however, the scrutiny is more intense, the voice is louder, and the figure at the center of the storm, Lewis Hamilton, infinitely more prepared to defend himself. While many believed that el fichaje de Lewis Hamilton por la escuderia de Maranello marcaría una nueva era de igualdad dentro del equipo, what is unfolding behind the red curtains paints a very different story. In recent weeks, sources close to the factory have revealed that Hamilton is beginning to suspect that the so-called Plan Numero Dos was not merely a contingency strategy but an unofficial, deeply embedded policy that has quietly positioned Charles Leclerc as the favored driver. What makes this revelation so explosive is not only the internal implications, but how it directly challenges the narrative of unity and fairness Ferrari has worked so hard to construct. From the outside, Ferrari has always presented a united front, with Frederick Vasseur insisting that both drivers receive equal machinery and strategic support. But recent telemetry comparisons, leaked to select Italian journalists, indicate that the development path of the SF25 has slowly but unmistakably leaned toward the feedback and driving preferences of Leclerc. Reports suggest that aerodynamic upgrades initially planned with Hamilton's input were either delayed or shelved altogether, while changes requested by Leclerc were greenlit within days. According to motorsport analyst Alberto Nobile, this trend started subtly during pre-season simulations in Fiorano and became more evident once the team began implementing chassis adjustments in late April. What is more alarming, however, is Hamilton's growing sense of isolation. According to insiders, the British driver has taken steps to have his debriefs documented and time-stamped, ensuring a digital trail of his technical contributions. He has also allegedly requested a third-party audit of the internal communication logs between the two engineering teams. While this might seem like a drastic step, It underscores the level of distrust that appears to be developing between Hamilton's camp and Ferrari leadership. One figure in particular, performance engineer Dario Angelis, has come under scrutiny after it emerged that several of Hamilton's setup requests were either misunderstood or not implemented on time, leading to visible tension during factory meetings. Adding another layer of complexity is the political dimension of the situation. Italian media outlets such as Corriere dello Sport have begun asking uncomfortable questions about whether Ferrari's long-standing cultural alignment with Leclerc, a Monegasque driver who speaks Italian fluently and trained within the Ferrari Academy, may be subconsciously influencing team dynamics. The idea that national or institutional favoritism might be affecting operational decisions has sparked outrage among fans of Hamilton, especially considering his global stature and achievements. It is a narrative eerily reminiscent of previous internal power struggles, such as the one between Rubens Barrichello and Miguel Schumacher 2 decades ago, where invisible hierarchies defined who was truly number one. But the most explosive twist may be coming from Hamilton himself. In a confidential conversation, reportedly leaked by a disgruntled member of his entourage, Hamilton is said to have described his current position as a strategic chess game, not a partnership, and even went as far as to question whether certain decisions were being made to preserve Leclerc's legacy, not to win. This line alone has sent tremors through the paddock, with several former drivers, including Damon Hill and Jen Magnussen, weighing in on television, suggesting that if these allegations prove true, they could mark one of the most damaging episodes in modern Ferrari history. Despite the internal strain, Ferrari remains silent publicly, refusing to engage in what they call external noise. But behind that silence, the cracks are widening, and Hamilton, known for his tactical patience and relentless pursuit of fairness, appears more determined than ever to bring the truth into the light. Whether this will result in a course correction from within the team, or push Hamilton to take even more drastic measures, remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, the atmosphere at Maranello is no longer one of quiet optimism. It is one of suspicion, calculation, and escalating tension. The depth of the situation at Maranello goes beyond a simple disagreement over strategy. According to several high-level sources familiar with internal Ferrari documentation, Lewis Hamilton has begun privately compiling what he refers to as a pattern of exclusion, a detailed log that points to multiple incidents over the past 5 months in which his input was either minimized or redirected. These include ignored simulation data, overlooked feedback on tire behavior, and even postponed meetings in which key aerodynamic decisions were allegedly finalized without his knowledge. The British driver, famous for his meticulous preparation and close involvement in technical development, reportedly sees these omissions not as accidents but as calculated steps to marginalize his influence inside the Scuderia. What makes these allegations particularly troubling is that they align with the long-standing perception of Ferrari as a team that operates with entrenched internal factions. Former Ferrari insiders, including ingenieros and team personnel from the Mauricio Arrivabene era, have anonymously told Italian outlets like La Gazzetta dello Sport that the Plan Numero Dos is not a document or official policy, but rather a cultural reflex, a default mode in which one driver is subtly, but consistently, prioritized. In the past, drivers like Felipe Massa, Jan-Erik Byrne and incluso Sebastian Vettel encountered similar frustrations when they attempted to assert technical leadership inside the team, only to find themselves outmaneuvered by a more politically aligned teammate or faction. This atmosphere has created what one former Ferrari race engineer called a dual reality. On the surface, everything appears balanced. Both drivers are shown equal on social media, given identical public briefings, and mentioned interchangeably in official press releases. But behind closed doors, decisions are made based on complex internal loyalties, long-standing personal relationships, and, crucially, the commercial direction of the brand. With Charles Leclerc increasingly seen as the Ferrari face for a new generation of fans, particularly in Europe, it is no secret that Maranello's marketing division has heavily invested in him as a symbolic figure of the brand's renaissance. This reality is not lost on Hamilton, who is reportedly frustrated by the fact that, despite his global status and unmatched experience, he feels relegated to the role of external consultant rather than a core architect of the team's evolution. According to individuals close to Hamilton, this realization is not only personal, it is political. He has allegedly raised concerns with top-level Ferrari executives that his presence is being leveraged for external credibility and image building, while internally his opinions are routinely second-guessed or reshaped to fit an existing agenda. Adding further complexity, there have been quiet tensions between Hamilton's personal performance team and Ferrari's in-house engineering department. Multiple sources claim that friction began to develop during joint simulator sessions, where discrepancies in driver feedback led to heated technical debates. One high-ranking engineer reportedly told colleagues that Hamilton's feedback is precise, but not always welcome, a comment interpreted by many as emblematic of the internal divide. In parallel, international observers have begun to question whether this entire saga may be influencing the team's overall cohesion. Former Ferrari team manager Yen Todt recently hinted, during a closed-door conference at the Institut du Sport Automobile in Paris, that trust must flow in both directions, and warned that, when a world champion begins to feel strategically outnumbered, performance inevitably suffers. Though he did not mention names, the context was unmistakable. In this increasingly toxic environment, the consequences could reach far beyond the current season. Analysts speculate that if the situation continues to deteriorate, Ferrari risks not only alienating one of the most successful drivers in history, but also reinforcing its reputation as a team where internal politics consistently undermine potential greatness. For Hamilton, the cost is not just competitive, it is personal. At this stage of his career, he did not join Ferrari to be a figurehead. He came to leave a legacy. The ripples of Lewis Hamilton's suspicions are no longer confined to the internal corridors of Maranello. Across the paddock, rival teams, former engineers, and senior figures in the sport are beginning to weigh in, not with direct statements, but with carefully coded language and strategic silences. Observers from Mercedes, where Hamilton built the bulk of his legacy, have privately expressed disappointment over what they describe as a clear lack of integration between the British driver and Ferrari's upper leadership. Toto Wolff, though publicly diplomatic, recently remarked that Luis thrives in environments where his voice has real influence, a comment widely interpreted as a subtle critique of Ferrari's rigid hierarchical structure. But what truly escalated the situation from an internal dispute to a full-blown institutional drama was a report published last week by the Swiss outlet Motorsport Actuel. According to their investigation, several staff members within the Ferrari strategy group have been ordered, explicitly, to prioritize data analysis for Charles Leclerc in simulation planning, even when Hamilton's side of the garage has raised critical variables during technical meetings. While Ferrari has officially denied these claims, the tone of their response was unusually defensive, and the silence from Hamilton himself only added more intrigue. Behind the scenes, there is also growing pressure from Hamilton's personal sponsors, some of whom have started requesting clarifications from Ferrari regarding the driver's long-term technical role. Brands like Tommy Hilfiger and Ineos have built entire campaigns around the idea of Hamilton as a pioneering voice, not just in racing, but in sustainability, diversity, and innovation. If these values are undermined by a perceived lack of respect or authority within his own team, the consequences could affect far more than just team morale. They could jeopardize business relationships and strategic alliances built over a decade of dominance and credibility. There is also the uncomfortable matter of trust, not just between Hamilton and Ferrari, but between Hamilton and the sport itself. Since his controversial loss in Yas Marina in 2021, which many still view as one of the most polarizing moments in Formula Uno history, Hamilton has operated with a cautious but firm demeanor. His move to Ferrari was meant to symbolize a return to purity, a challenge embraced for legacy, not politics. But now, insiders suggest he feels as though the same patterns are repeating. Selective transparency, unequal influence, and an ever-present sense that the decisions shaping his career are being made by others, behind closed doors. This disillusionment has not gone unnoticed by his fans, who have flooded social media with messages demanding clarity. Hashtags like "Let Luis Lead" and "Plan 2 Exposed" have trended across Europe and South America, as supporters dissect radio messages, body language, and team videos in search of hidden signs. The narrative that Ferrari is protecting Leclerc at Hamilton's expense is gaining traction, not because it is entirely confirmed, but because Ferrari has done little to convincingly deny it. To complicate matters even further, a leaked internal memo, yet to be verified, allegedly shows that Maranello's executive committee recently held a closed-door meeting to discuss potential reputational risks associated with internal disputes between its two drivers. The memo, quoted by Italian journalist Tiziana Cravani, includes a chilling line: "If strategic unity cannot be maintained, we must re-evaluate the composition of the driver pair." While Ferrari representatives have refused to comment on the leak, the implication is explosive. If harmony cannot be restored, either Hamilton or Leclerc may be pushed out. In this storm of political maneuvering, corporate interests, and fragile egos, one truth remains clear. Lewis Hamilton is not a driver anyone can afford to marginalize quietly. He is a global icon, a proven strategist, and a man who understands the weight of every move he makes. If Ferrari continues down this path, they may not only lose a champion, they may lose the one figure capable of bringing true transformation to a team still haunted by its own past. Now, as Lewis Hamilton faces the most politically charged season of his entire career, the spotlight has shifted from performance to principle. What began as subtle radio disagreements and strategic ambiguity has evolved into a question of identity, both for Hamilton as a driver and for Ferrari as an institution. If the team of Maranello truly intended to reinvent itself by welcoming one of the sport's most iconic voices, then their current trajectory tells a troubling story. Because to invite Lewis Hamilton into your ranks and then cage his voice, dilute his influence, or worse, relegate him to a ceremonial figure behind Charles Leclerc's rise, is not just a tactical mistake, it is a betrayal of the values they publicly claimed to embrace. In the world of Formula Uno, there is no greater currency than trust. And it is precisely this trust that now appears fractured. According to sources close to Hamilton's inner circle, including a recent report from French outlet Auto Hebdo, the British driver has begun private consultations with his legal and management team to review the conditions of his current contract. While no formal action has been taken, the language of those meetings, described as protectionist and forward-thinking, suggests Hamilton is preparing contingencies. Not to abandon ship recklessly, but to ensure he is never again blindsided by internal politics masquerading as strategy. What makes this entire ordeal even more disconcerting is how silent Ferrari has remained throughout. In an era when transparency is key, and when team principals often appear more on camera than their drivers, the absence of direct clarification from the Maranello leadership has only fanned the flames. Binotto's replacement, Fred Vasseur, has offered only vague affirmations about team unity and shared ambitions, avoiding direct engagement with the fundamental accusations. Is there, or is there not, a plan to prioritize Leclerc over Hamilton? That question lingers like smoke over a fire no one wants to admit is still burning. Worse yet, whispers from within suggest that this so-called plan numero dos was never about pace or telemetry data, it was about brand protection. Leclerc, being the homegrown talent, the image of youth and marketing potential, fits a more controllable mold. Hamilton, in contrast, is independent, outspoken, and surrounded by a network of advisors and activists who do not bend to the will of corporate sponsors. In that sense, the internal tension goes beyond racing. It becomes a battle of culture, of who gets to define Ferrari's future in the 21st century. The consequences of underestimating this clash may reach far beyond the paddock. Hamilton is not just a competitor. He is a global ambassador for sustainability, equality, and innovation in motorsport. If the message the sport sends is that such voices are only welcome when they remain quiet, then the message it sends to the next generation of talent is equally chilling. It tells them that legacy does not guarantee respect, and that excellence does not shield you from being politically outmaneuvered. For now, Lewis Hamilton remains with Ferrari, physically. But mentally and strategically, he has entered a different space. He is watching, he is listening, and he is preparing. If Ferrari continues to dance around the truth, if they continue to allow internal preferences to override merit, then they may find themselves without the very star they once celebrated as the missing piece to their return to greatness. Because in a sport built on precision, timing, and transparency, nothing is more dangerous than a driver who feels betrayed and has nothing left to prove.